Hi and welcome to my tutorial today. Today I'm going to show you how to flat pattern make a sleeve which will attach to your bodice. So this is the base pattern block, which means it is the pattern block that can be used for every future iteration of a sleeve that you might want to design. So I'm going to walk through the steps on how I do it, and hopefully it can be of use to you if you are looking at making a sleeve for your bodice. Okay, when you first start drafting your pattern, you're going to need a large piece of paper. I have some brown paper on a roll that I cut up and use, but you can use wrapping paper if that's what you've got, as long as you can cut a really long sheet, and then you can start doing your pattern. So here I am just marking out all of the areas that I need to measure, and as you can see, it is the armhole, elbow, wrist, and the upper arm girth. So you need to measure around all of these areas, and that is the area that you actually to do that. What I do is I use a piece of string. When you're measuring yourself, I use a piece of string and then I cut it, and then I just measure the piece of string to determine how big that area was. And so here, when the camera can get into focus, you can see that for my armhole, when I did it around myself, I'm roughly around about 41.5 centimeters. So what you need to do is then mark that. I've allowed for a little bit of allowance, so I put it at 42 centimeters, and then measure all of the areas and make sure you just jot that down. Okay, so now that you have all your measurements for the armhole, upper arm girth, elbow, and wrist, you actually need to measure the distance between the top of your shoulder right down to your wrist, and that's obviously going to be your sleeve length. So you just want to mark and note what that will be as well, like I have here. Now moving on to the actual pattern drafting. The first thing I do is draw a straight line up at the top. I leave as much space as I can down at the bottom to draw the arm length or the sleeve length. But the first thing I do is really draw that T kind of intersection. So down at the bottom, you need to measure right down to the sleeve length that you were looking at achieving, and for me it was 57 centimeters. So I measured right down from the top of my T-square down to the bottom, and then I square it off again to create a horizontal line at the bottom of my pattern. And naturally this is where the sleeve will be, whereas at the top, that's where the shoulder will be. Okay, now that I have the top of my sleeve and the bottom of my sleeve, I need to measure down from the top of my sleeve to an area that we call the crown level line. Now that line is about 1/3 of your armhole measurement. So you just need to take your armhole measurement that you had earlier and divide that by 3 and then mark that. For me, it was 14 centimeters. And then you're just going to square on the left and the right to create the horizontal line, which then becomes our crown level line. And you'll see how we use that later. Okay, the next step is to now find the elbow line. And the elbow line is a little bit easier to find. It is simply the measurement between the bottom of your sleeve, which is your wrist area, and that point that we've just marked, which is the crown level line. Then what you do is you halve that measurement and you minus 2.5 centimeters. And when you minus 2.5 centimeters, you measure down from the line that the horizontal line that we've just created to give us the elbow line. And don't forget to square off this elbow line by marking the horizontal line on the left and the right from the center point. Okay, now that we have all of our core horizontal lines, I'm just going to mark what they mean to us. So shoulder, upper arm, elbow, and at the bottom, wrist. Now we're going to use our measurement to build the circumference of our wrist. And how we do that is we take our wrist measurement and divide that by 2, because this is a full pattern, not a half pattern or a quarter pattern, which makes it 12.7 centimeters for me. And then you just have to mark those points both on the left hand side and on the right hand side. And then we're going to connect them up as we move up the pattern. Okay, now I'm going to move up to the top of the pattern and I'm going to focus on the upper arm girth area. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take our upper arm girth measurement and then divide that by 2 so that we can get the 2 halves and sides measured accurately on the horizontal line. So for me, it's 16.5 centimeters, and I'm just going to measure from the center point 16.5 centimeters and then mark it on both the left and the right side. Okay, now we have to just connect the upper arm to the wrist line, and that will form our shape. When you do this part, you will connect it, but you can go all the way up to the top because the top will actually be curved. What we're doing is we're just going to use this vertical line and measure straight up and connect it straight to the top shoulder horizontal line as well. So the dots on the arm, upper arm and wrist act as a guide that connects us straight up to the shoulder. So all we need to do up at the top now is measure the distance between the 2 dots that I've just pointed here. I'm starting with the left side and it's roughly 18 centimeters. And then what we will do with this measurement is divide that by 4. For me, that's 4.5 centimeters, and now I have to mark 4.5 centimeters from the center of my pattern, both on the left and the right hand side. Now I'll show you what we're going to use this for, but I'm just going to mark it first so you can see where the quarter measurement is happening. Now this is the same, it doesn't matter what size pattern you're making. It will be the same practice, just divided by 4. We do the same thing down at the bottom when we measure the upper arm distance between the center point and the end point in 16.5 centimeters, and then we divide that by 6 on the upper arm section instead, which for me is 2.7 centimeters. So I'm coming in from the left-hand side of the side of the pattern rather than from the center, and I'm marking that point. And then you repeat it on the other side. Now we're going to connect these 2 dots. So connecting these 2 dots together, you can kind of see now that it's starting to form its shape. I do that on both sides, and what I have to do here is start to measure how I will curve this sleeve. And how I do that is I use a 1.2 centimeter measurement as a guide for how much I want it to curve. And I do that both on the top and on the bottom. So for the bottom, I'm pointing the guide up, whereas at the top of my shoulder point, I'm pointing the guide downwards. And I repeat that for both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Now using your curved ruler, this is where it's a little bit more fun. You need to now connect and find a good curve point that connects to that dot as the guide for the curve, and connect that to the vertical line, vertical, semi-horizontal, 45-degree line to begin curving your sleeve. And you repeat that with the top section like so. And do that for the right hand side of your pattern as well. Pretty straightforward, and now you can see that's how you get your bell curve at the top of your pattern. Well, that's how I get it anyway. This is the way I was taught. Again, I just use 1.2 centimeters as a guide. You can do more or less, but this is how I was taught. Now that is the completed pattern, and as you can see, once you cut it all out, this is what it looks like. You can draw additional guides in the light grey lead. You can see on my pattern I just halved the each of the halves to create quarters so I could see where those guides were, but you don't need to. But ultimately this is what your sleeve will look like once you cut it out. Naturally, you need to obviously cut with seam allowance. This is a perfect fit pattern, but this is how it all connects together. Hope you liked the video, and please like and subscribe if you did. I'll do more pattern making tutorials in the weeks to come. Thanks.